Welcome again to another episode of Wisdom Personified, Conversations with Dudu Msomi. I'm so happy that you are actually going on this journey with me. I really appreciate it. Today, you are going to have such an amazing conversation because I'm speaking to Prof. Saville. I call him Prof even when we're not in class. Dr. Adrian Saville is the CEO and founder of Canon Asset Managers. Prof, how are you?
I'm good. It's great to be with you.
I always enjoy spending time with you. How do you unwind? You know, what do you do for fun?
Well, I unwound this morning, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
Exercise, trying to stay...
Don't rub it in. We were just talking about something just happened. I stopped exercising. Okay, yeah. Inspire me to go back.
Well, I'm not sure I can inspire, but I can share.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, you know, just the discipline of exercising regularly, and aside from, I think, the body time that you get, more importantly, the head time that you get. So very often, you know, my sense is your best chance to sort of de-stress, reflect, gather your thoughts is when you are in a gym or in a yoga class or a Pilates class.
Really?
Or
okay.
Walking or running.
I get that any moment. Everywhere I get inspired. So, as I said, you are the CEO of Canon Asset Managers, which is an asset management company. You're also an economist.
Yeah, I'm an economist by training.
What attracted you to economics? Was that your favorite subject at school?
It was a bit of an accident.
Yeah.
At school, I wouldn't describe myself as an excelling student.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I sort of meandered through school.
Thank goodness you managed. Yeah.
And I found myself at university, signed up for what I suppose would be the usual suspect. My father is a chartered accountant, and the suggestion was this was going to be a robust, sensible career for me to pursue. I signed up for a commerce degree, and absolutely nothing about it inspired me or exhilarated me. I found it rather dry and uninspiring.
Really?
But there were components of it that captured my attention, including my first year in economics. There was a law component, and people I think would describe these as the softer subjects. Mm-hmm. And then friends, peers at university were doing arts degrees. I'll say that very quietly in case my dad is listening. And the arts degrees included, you know, language, sociology, psychology.
Yes.
And I would sit in these classes and I was absolutely mesmerized. Economic history.
Yeah.
And I think it was economic history more than economics that I fell in love with, where economic history tells the story of transformation, transition, migration, from, you know, industrial revolutions, how
the history of money,
how companies, countries, societies build and fall. And I mean, really, that just absolutely intrigued me. And I was very fortunate to have a professor who later became my PhD supervisor, who just absolutely embodied this passion. And he would arrive at a lecture theatre and speak for 45 minutes without a script, every single detail he knew, and he would weave you through these fascinating stories. That's where the love started. Yeah,
which, you know, you like that, because, I mean, I didn't do BCom, I did social sciences, majored in psychology, but, I mean, this is how you inspired the love of economics to me, even corporate finance, corporate investment, you know, so you have that. But you also have those 6 things, you know, the 6 things you talk about?
The six-pack.
The six-pack.
Yeah.
You know.
So the six-pack is very often the 2 worlds that I live in of economics and finance. Economics as a professor and finance as a business venture. I think both of them are treated as intimidating, and they are very often sort of hard to access. And if you start talking about either economics or finance, most people shut down.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tragedy, because as citizens,
it's our lives.
It's one of the most important components of our individual trajectories is the context in which we live.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand what shapes and shifts that context, then we really are victims, or sort of naive bystanders, passengers. And I don't want to be a passenger. I want to be part of the shaping and the shifting. So a large part of my work as a professor at Gibbs has been about understanding what builds prosperous countries. And in that work, to give you the dry part, we've studied data covering 160 countries over 60 years, so that's 10,000 country years of data. And it was in search of what I think is a simple but elegant question. Do countries that build prosperous, inclusive societies, places that are happy and healthy, economically, socially, politically, do they have common ingredients? The short answer to that is yes, and they have 6 common things. They have high savings and investment rates. The countries start young. In other words, there are more people going into the workforce than going into retirement. Education and healthcare, which will probably make immediate sense to the audience to this series. That they are open for business, but that they are functionally open. Dysfunctional openness is slavery. Functional openness is a win-win relationship, that by you and me engaging, we are each better off. And then the 6th ingredient, certainly trained as an economist, the search always for the industry is, how do we find best policies, best practice? And this absolutely intrigued me in the work. That what we find is that it's not best policy, but rather policy stability. Establish the rules for your society, communicate them clearly, put institutions in place. This won't be lost on South Africans. Put institutions in place that can hold the line. And you've got a functional framework for building prosperity. Those are the 6 things.
I must say, I mean, when you shared it, because you were very kind, to be part of a leadership development program, and you shared those learnings.
With Basara,
and it was just like, gosh, why don't people know this? You know.
So if you go to Ethiopia, Costa Rica, Chile, Estonia, choose your country, and you ask, well, how did this happen? It's not a miracle.
No.
It's a consequence of these 6 ingredients, and that, I think, is where South Africa's work sits.
And that's where we should be focusing, President Ramaphosa. That would be
Tito
good.
Mbowene's nailed it.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to touch on the new document that's just come out?
I thought I did. That was it. He's nailed it.
Really? He captured all that? Because I haven't had time to read it.
He's got a lot of it.
Wow.
And look, to be fair, the NDP also has a lot of this. The deficit with the NDP is 400 odd pages of spectacular policy and very little evidence of effective implementation.
So it's the implementation that...
The fact that we're down to 77 pages with Tito Mboweni, but what he has emphasized, and this is where I think he has nailed it, is he's put it into a time frame, short, medium, long term, and he's described it in the form of implementable policy. This is what we need to do, and there are action points.
Yeah. What do you think is distinctive about you? What do you think is your value proposition? Unique value proposition.
That's awkward.
Yeah.
Can I ask my kids or my wife?
They will give feedback after watching
kids
this.
Will tell you my very bad dad jokes, which I find hilarious. I hope, and perhaps the fact that we are here together is some evidence of that. Is that by having been able to work in industries that change lives, I've been able to have impact.
Yeah.
If you can make even the smallest changes in financial behavior, if you can shift a deficit family to a surplus family, what I mean by that is if you can get a family that's saving 100 Rand a month to start saving 100 Rand a month, you then establish that as a habit, and that habit transfers to children. And then you get the compounding of time. I mean, you actually land up with the most profound impacts over long periods of time. I'll give you a simple example. Hopefully this doesn't come across as an advert, but
yes.
At Canon Asset Managers, we build tax-free savings accounts.
Tax-free savings accounts,
If you are a 45-year-old and you put 1,000 Rand a month into a tax-free savings account, when you hit 65, you will have 2 million rand. 1,000 rand a month.
That's all.
You give it a couple of decades and it compounds up. If you start earlier, not 45, 30, it compounds even further. It goes to 4 million. If you start even earlier, not 30, try 15, it goes to just over 10 million. And if you start compounding your 1,000 rand a month for your 1-year-old child, when that child hits 65, they will have, hold your breath, 45 million rand.
Wow.
That's in today's prices. Now, for many people, 1,000 rand a month simply isn't possible.
Yeah.
But then take a zero off it, make it 100 rand a month, or take another zero off it, make it 10 rand a month.
Yeah. Just start somewhere.
Start somewhere.
And you are a value investor.
In part. I think I'm probably...
Have you evolved? Yeah.
That's
Yes.
nice and rude.
No, I'm just saying you've improved from value investor, because that was the standard.
No, I think value investing is what I'm known for,
Yeah.
or described as, and I'm quite comfortable owning that if I can acknowledge that value investing, very often people think value investing is about buying distressed businesses,
Yes.
catching falling knives, going and looking at disasters and hoping for turnaround. I mean, certainly there is a place for that,
Yeah.
but the way I would describe value investing is it has just 2 ingredients, and so you can probably put a line through the word value and just call this investing, but
Yeah.
the industry wants to sort of put us into pigeonholes, so I'm quite comfortable owning that pigeonhole or being put into that pigeonhole. Value investing or investing is about buying good assets at good prices.
Yeah.
And the good prices is the value part. That it's easy to find good businesses, good assets. But if you pay up for them, you've just made a bad investment. You've just bought a really good company at a very high price. That's not a good investment.
Yeah.
So our definition of investing, value investing, is buy good assets at good prices and then give them 2 ingredients. The one is out of your control, time. So the earlier you get going, the better. And the other is inside of your control, discipline and determination, dedication, perseverance.
Okay. That's a different.
Yeah. And then, value investing can stretch all the way from individual companies through to countries. And in this environment, in South Africa, if you look at particular companies, I think there's some really interesting opportunities. The big banks look very attractive, lots of South African industrials. And then globally, China, Japan, even South Africa as a country fits into the attractive box.
That's great. What keeps you awake at night? What is of grave concern to you as a human being?
Probably 2 things. The one is macro and the other is micro. The macro is for the country. How are we doing? Are we on the right path? My answer to that is we are coping. We're not excelling.
Yeah. Could
but
be doing
we're
better.
not Venezuelan.
Yeah.
We're stuttering and sometimes we stumble, but our work as a country is really cut out for us. And the mood is somber, confidence in the country is low.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I think keeps certainly me awake and probably us awake collectively.
The ones that are patriotic and love the country. I don't think
Yeah,
everybody
the
gets
other-
kept
yeah.
awake by those kinds of concerns.
And the micro thing that keeps me awake is for our individual wellness and well-being, especially our children.
Yeah.
Tash and I have got, I can say 4 teenagers because my son turns 13 tomorrow.
Yay! Happy birthday in advance. Yeah.
So we've got 4 teenagers and their lifespans, given science and medical advances, their lifespans are comfortably into the hundreds. So their working careers aren't going to finish at that stereotypical 65. They're possibly going to work into their 80s, 90s. What are they going to do? What will that world look like? How do we prepare them for that? And if they're going to go to their if they're going to go into their hundreds, I'm probably going to go with Tash into my 80s or 90s. How are we going to fare if retirement age is 65? What access to medicine will we have? What will that life look like? Are you being sustained, or is it really a high quality of life?
Yeah.
You sound like rather glib things, but
yeah,
I think they're worth worrying about.
being beyond living, like really enjoying the life.
You don't want to just breathe in and out.
Yeah, no, I get that.
You want to thrive.
Yeah, that's my thing. I love thriving. I thrive, regardless. What's the most
You
courageous?
thrive on Noordhoek Beach. I've seen lovely photos of you
With the dog.
dogs on, yeah.
My friend Kim Hawk, she's amazing. I love the dog. What's the most courageous decision you've ever taken, and what motivated you to take it as a business person?
I think as an individual, probably some of they weren't hard to do from a conscious, ethical, moral belief perspective, but they were hard to do in terms of carrying them out. Was my political activity, political conscience in the 1980s. That was tough.
Were you ostracized?
Without question. And it was a hard environment.
And you were young.
I was
Yeah.
I was a teenager, early university years. I had every conviction that what I was doing was right. But boy, there was fierce policing and military oppression.
Yeah.
And the choices for me as a young white male were go to jail or leave the country. Those are tough choices to take. And I managed to navigate with that political opposition without either going to jail or leaving the country.
Yeah.
That was hard, but that wasn't a business decision. I think to answer your question from a business perspective, can I give two? And the first was to start my own business 20 years ago. Building businesses is no joke.
Yeah, Prof. You
Case in
tell
point.
me now.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And there is no day, month, year that has been easy. That was hard. We got the company, and now I say we, is I've had fantastic partners, business partners, shareholders over the years who've helped me build the business. But we got to a circumstance 3 years ago where I'd landed up in the wrong place. My business was in the wrong home. And I could either sort of stay there quietly and exist,
Yes.
which I've just complained about. I don't want to breathe in and out. I want to thrive. And so in my late 40s, I had to take the decision to pull my business away and start again. And this is tough.
Yeah.
When you've got family commitments, when you are not early career and you've got sort of all the optionality and agility that you would have in your 20s, that if mistakes happen, they come with far, far higher cost. And I was incredibly fortunate to find the partnership of Jaapie van Niekerk, who is the head of Bidvest Financial Services. And I joined him 2 years ago with Canon Asset Managers becoming part of the group, and it has been the most extraordinary 2 years. I think it's the most fun I've ever had in business.
Yeah. But you see,
But it was hard to take that
I
decision.
think the wisdom I'm getting there is sometimes we are so caught up in fear that you kind of hold back the blessings that are due to you. Because the minute you let go of that, look at what you were exposed to. Now you're having the best life of your life.
Yeah, look,
Life of your life.
life of my life. If fear was a guide,
Yeah.
I would have sort of
Yes.
hunkered down, stuck it out, and not to be too glib, it was okay, but I wasn't in my zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
In my
sweet,
element.
That sweet spot is very important. You
Yeah.
said there's a second one?
I thought I told you two. The first was to start my business.
Yeah. And then the one to leave.
which was
Okay.
it would have been much easier to take a job, in the early 1990s, mid 1990s. Off we go into investment banking or asset management. The path is somehow, seems or looks or feels easier.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've never got that parallel experiment.
Yeah.
I can't wind back the clock and
Yeah.
try it all again. But that was hard. Hey?
Now I know the feeling. As a black female, African female, my life in corporate could be more lucrative than it is now. But there are things that are just
But
so
you're in your
important.
element.
Yes, I thrive and the impact that I'm making. What's your view of the phenomenon of white privilege, and how does this concept interact in your life?
Is there a place in this interview that we can say, no, this is not an interview, this is a conversation.
It's a conversation, Prof.
So that
Yes.
I can say awkward.
Are you feeling awkward? We have a friend in the room, which is a Prof's dog. Yeah.
So, white privilege, is it a phenomenon? Without question. But I sort of immediately want to start apologizing, but make absolutely no mistake. I was born into a circumstance of privilege. Relative to a black male my age, the state spent 40 times the amount of money on my education, my healthcare, and I was raised through a robust education and healthcare system. That's incredible privilege. My father, and I think as a consequence of his race, had a strong career, good income, and he could provide beyond, even more than I got from, my white privilege growing up in apartheid South Africa. So yes, without question, privilege exists. The but that I want to put in is when I think we start getting caught up in this and using this as an explainer for everything that happens from here. So I've seen people start with the most incredible privilege and squander it. I've seen people start with the most incredible privilege and rub it in others' faces. I've seen people start with absolutely no privilege. And one of my favorite examples of this is the cohort that I had the extraordinary opportunity of looking after at the University of Natal, called the MEC group. Mm-hmm. And out of this MEC group have come people who were born into, let's give them a handle, historically disadvantaged. A-grade students born into tough economic circumstances. And I had the privilege, the white privilege, of using my education advantage to help them through university. Yeah. And those MX students, Andile Kumalo is one of them, the builder of Power FM.
Star in South Africa, yeah.
Ernest Quinder, who's building a fantastic career in finance and corporate finance. Pilisiwe Sibia, who went on to become the CEO of MTN Cameroon. These were people born into absence of privilege, disadvantage, and look what they've done.
So we can turn it around, It's how we energize.
And if I've got privilege,
yes,
I can share it.
How do you kind of share that story with other white males who seem to think when you share, they get deprived, instead of thinking you also thrive just as much as I thrive?
I'm a firm believer in Winwin, that functional collaboration, sharing, cooperation, that if we can find each other and if we can connect and integrate, then our prospect of building something much stronger than the individual parts. Otherwise, we're trapped.
Yeah, and also just to make our country stronger, I always think if more of us are prosperous, the more our economy will be prosperous.
So to move it then from sort of individual describers to country describers, show me a country that has got rich by building walls.
I love everything you are, but what is your Achilles heel? What do you think holds you back, or how do you manage it so that it does not impact your success?
I suspect that, like many entrepreneurs or people with entrepreneurial DNA, my Achilles heel is shiny penny syndrome.
It means
that adventure excites me. doing new things thrills me. So I've got to manage that. I've got to put clear boundaries in that, discipline myself. That look, that looks exciting, but it's not in, it's not in the sweet spot. We're going to let that one sail by. So I think that's an Achilles heel that I have to manage. The other is saying yes when I should be saying no. It's so much easier to say, yes, I'll do this, yes, I'll do. But if you say yes to everything, you actually can't be your strongest self. So you've got to be able to say no. And I think that's another
it's a tough one.
Vulnerability that I'm aware of.
Yes.
Achilles heel.
I'm so happy that most times you've said yes when I've requested your help. Because honestly, Sorry Leadership Partners would not be where it is without human beings like you.
And the yes thing, I think, shouldn't be lost either, in that there is an undertone to this saying yes, because that's the work that Tash does, my wife, where she's the CEO of the Youth Employment Service, the Yes
which is doing a
initiative.
great job at the moment.
They've just hit this week 21,000 jobs that they've established since November of last year.
Wow.
It's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, that's so
less than a year.
Yeah. So sometimes you want to say yes.
Yes.
I think I get an. Is that a free advert?
Yes. No, the thing is that Chris is doing great work for the country. Otherwise, I wouldn't allow that plug. Your area of focus is competitiveness of companies, industries, and countries. What do you think South Africa is not maximizing in terms of its comparative edge amongst the emerging markets?
There's a lot South Africa can maximize. Maybe without answering your question, there are things that South Africa is minimizing.
Yes.
And we almost hold a world trophy in foot shooting, that we squander opportunity. And South Africa, if we go back to the 6 ingredients that we touched on earlier, South Africa has the capacity, the structure, historically, to grow at about 4.5%. That's what we would call our growth potential. Over that 4.5% potential, we've actually delivered closer to 2. So about halfway there. More recently, that growth potential has slipped into the 3% category, and we've got into the habit of delivering 1.5%. So again, sort of about halfway there. So what are we not harvesting or harnessing is, I think, the power of the collective. And the power of the collective is to establish a unified vision, a common narrative, a sense that we are in this together, and that the only way that we can do this is collectively.
Yeah.
And that then builds cohesion, coherence, a sense of purpose, and confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we have lost our way, that it's, well, if you're gaining, it's at my expense, and you're against me, I believe this, you believe that. We don't speak a common language. We don't hold a set of common views. And we need to be very, very careful here, because you push this too far and you're in the world of nationalism. So, I think there is an important line at which you've crossed the boundary, the barrier from common purpose to nationalist sentiment. We do not want the latter, but we want a collective, a common purpose. That's, I think, where we have squandered.
But also, when I look at some of the relationships we have across race groups, across gender, across age, I feel the privilege of associating with those people and understanding, if we harness that, we'll be amazing. Most of the time in this country, we always like fighting. We don't trust this race, we don't trust this party, if we could just overcome that.
So that, I think you've nailed it with the word trust.
Yeah.
Because it is only through trust that we can get into a common and joined initiative. If I don't trust you, I'm always going to be looking over my shoulder, you know, what's in it for her, how's she gaming me?
Second guessing every intention you have.
So that trust has to be built.
Yeah. You know, September is usually, it's not usually, it is Heritage Month in South Africa. What would you like your legacy to be? Not that we ever have control of that, because by the time you get to the end of your life, it could be different. But I mean, what's something that will please you when you look down at your life from on high?
I guess when you sort of gasping your final breaths, if you have the chance for reflection, always imagine we're going to die in a hospital bed, right?
Yeah, or in your own bed at home.
Yeah. But you know, when you think back on your life, you know, are you going to remember the car that was in your drive?
Yeah.
Or are you going to remember the holiday with your children, with your family, with your wife?
Yeah.
Are you going to remember, you know, the music shows that you went to, the musical instrument you learned to play, the books you read? Or are you going to remember a bonus or a paycheck or, you know, a long weekend working in the office? So I think, you know, from a legacy perspective, looking back at not what I've left, but how I've conducted myself, I believe I'll be able to look back and say I conducted myself with honor, with purpose, and by giving.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the biggest gifts that I can give, I take it as a real compliment that you describe me as a good teacher, because if
having won the Excellence Award since 2007, can we add that? Yes.
To be able to teach and to build and to leave a group of people, a classroom, richer for having given your time and shared your experiences and your perspective and your knowledge.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best gifts you can give. And I would be thrilled if that was the legacy that I leave.
But also for me, it's the passion. You have this passion for the country, which is really, it's heartwarming.
Well, I think that's what feeds me, you know, so much in the classroom. Yeah. Is, you know, I'm not there to tell you, heaven forbid, how a supply and a demand curve work.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen these.
Yes.
But if I tell you about infant mortality and life expectancy and access to healthcare, that matters.
Yeah, because that's our life.
Yeah.
In closing, what wisdom would you want to leave us with?
Do it with your heart. And if you can do it with your heart, with belief, with purpose, I think you wake up happy.
Yeah.
You wake up knowing that even if the day is hard, it's going to be good.
Yes.
And maybe two things that never take for granted. Time, it only goes in one direction.
Yes.
And health, because when it's gone,
that's it.
Yeah, so I think, you know, if those were sort of three fundamental principles that I would put into the pot of, if you can recognize, you know, your well-being, your health, that time travels in one direction, take the opportunity, use it wisely, and act with purpose, conviction, belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for being you. I mean,
I don't know how to be anyone else.
Yeah, I know. I love the you are. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Wisdom Personified, Conversations with Dudu Msomi. And do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we look forward to chatting to you again next time.